that. Okay, so dopamine does two things. It produces that feeling of enthusiasm.
Yes.
That's why people take cocaine, for example, or most of the drugs of abuse that are stimulants.
Right.
Okay, so it produces that feeling of reward, but that's not all it does. So imagine that there's a positive outcome and that produces some enthusiasm. Okay, now imagine that there's a chain of neurological events that led up to that positive outcome.
Yes.
Okay, what dopamine does is encourage the neural systems that were active just before that positive event occurred to grow.
Yes.
So now that
actually
means
you're creating more wiring.
And you're strengthening whatever connections were used
That's
to.
right.
So
you're going from dial-up to a higher level.
If you're increasing the energy and you're simultaneously getting people to configure their goals, and those two things are happening at the same time, that should increase the probability that the goals that they adopt will be instantiated permanently into memory. And then it's also not exactly the kind of memory that you would call to mind to talk about. It's the kind of memory that you see the world through.
Yes.
So that's that's procedural memory. It's a completely different kind of memory.
I get it.
It's the kind of memory that, so let's say you practice applying a certain framework of interpretation to your circumstances.
Yes.
Okay, that practice reconfigures procedural memory, and that's literally that's the rewiring of the system through which you view the world.
That's correct.
Right.
And when you have a new view of the world, you come up with new meanings. And meanings, as you know, we both know, your maps of meaning. My entire life has been, I remember reading Man's Search for Meaning. I'm actually making the film. And it was one of the books that influenced me the most, because the ability to find meaning, even in the most difficult time. And Viktor Frankl, to me, is just a godsend to this planet.
It's a great book.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a great
If you haven't
book.
read it, please, whoever you're listening, read it. Or anybody's
That's
ever
Man's Search for Meaning. Yes, read that book.
It's incredible. But the point of your meanings change, your focus and your meanings change when your energy shifts. And so it's so fundamental to bring that energy up. And most people have no reference for it in their body. If you go to a concert, I remember Pat Riley came to one of our, who owns a piece of the Miami Heat. He was an amazing coach. If you're not familiar with the NBA basketball, one of the winningest coach in history. Good friend of mine, known him for 30 years. And he came to one of our programs and he said, Tony, this is like the 7th game of the NBA championship, but it goes on for 4 days and it's 13 hours a day.
Right.
So that vibrancy, and most people at the game are cheering at times and not. This is an experience in your body. That's why I do the number of hours. That's why it's immersion. That's why it's multiple days, 4 days or 6 days. And that's why it has the lasting impact. But you're right. The dopamine circuits are actually creating, what's the white matter in your brain? The myelin, right? Creating the myelin.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So if you look at,
in the myelin
you look at a
sheet.
great athlete, people look at somebody like, I'm fortunate enough to own a piece of several sporting teams, and one of them is the Golden State Warriors. And you look at Steph Curry, the greatest 33-point shooter in the world. And people look at him and he goes and he shoots the ball from like almost half court, and he's chomping on the side of his mouthpiece, and he doesn't even wait to go. He turns and smiles, and he knows. And then all of a sudden the crowd goes wild and they go through. It's like, it looks like impossible. But where did that impossible come from? He built the myelin over and over and over again, so it's hardwired.
Yeah, exactly.
He knows exactly what did. Now, how did he do that? This is the part that we all forget. I always tell people, when you see people who are amazing in public, they're being rewarded in public for what they've practiced massively in private.
Yes.
So here's his plan. Just take 15 years in the NBA. That's all he's been there. Greatest 3-point shooter in history. Nobody even close if you're not familiar with the NBA. He practices 500 shots a day, every day, 7 days a week, bar none. That's 3,500 shots a week. It's 168,000 shots a month.
Right.
2.52 million shots, not forget his college career, just in his professional career, so that he can make 3,300 3-point shots and be the greatest in history. That's less than 1/10 of 1% of the time was it compared to his practice.